we're going to introduce you to our cousin Rick and show you his incredible motorcycle collection. I'm Justin.
And I am Aaron.
And this is Husman Bros. Before we go too much further, please subscribe for more great content like this. All right, Rick, I'm ready for the tour. Let's start with this. This is just incredible. Tell me about this motorcycle.
So this bike we built in memory of Woodstock, which was 1969. So this is a little hardtail, rigid frame, panhead motor, Springer front end, and if you notice, it's got the tie-dye and the psychedelic colors to it, which were all part of Woodstock. Woodstock here in gold leaf, Jimi Hendrix on the gas tank, you can see, and on the rear fender I have Janis Joplin.
And is that a ticket to Woodstock on the rear fender as well?
This is. So a guy that worked with me on this bike, we actually built it for him originally, went to Woodstock, and he showed us the ticket, and so we put the ticket on there for that.
So this is an amazing paint job. I mean, if you crawl over, there's not a part of this bike that's unpainted. What does a paint job like this, how long does something like this take?
On a paint job like this, you're looking at 4 to 6 months, and you're looking at anywhere from 10 to 20 grand.
Wow.
I mean, it's all airbrush. That's the thing. It's all airbrush.
Yeah, I mean, the detail here is incredible. So here's a fun fact. I actually was born not too far from Woodstock.
Okay. Up in New York?
Up in New York. I was born in the Catskills.
Yet you wear a cowboy hat.
Well, I moved here as soon as I could. So
I got here fast.
Tell me about this one. So this looks to be a cousin to this bike. Are they the same theme?
This bike is my Janis Joplin tribute bike. Janis Joplin was from here in Texas, Port Arthur, and so I wanted to do a tribute to her. So she's painted on the gas tank with her nickname Pearl across there. She's painted all over the bike, and the difference is the Woodstock bike utilizes a panhead motor, and the Janis bike is a shovel head motor. Still in the psychedelic theme, but this one is all about Janis Joplin. And one of the things you'll notice on the Woodstock bike is a single loop frame, which means it's just one loop, whereas on the Janis it's a straight leg frame, which there's two parts of the frame coming down to cradle the motor.
So did you build these frames from scratch, or are these something that you buy and then make your own?
We special order them from a company called Paco that we used to build our own frames, but that's just a very tedious thing. Paco's been doing it for 50 years, and they'll build frames to your specification. That's why we work with Paco.
Got it, okay. Now, this is reminiscent of Janis Joplin's Porsche. Did you actually use some of the stuff from her Porsche on this design?
No, but I used the Porsche pictures of it as inspiration. And about 10 years ago, the Gulf Coast Museum in Port Arthur, Texas, they have a big Janis Joplin display, including the Porsche. They wanted this bike there, so my wife and I took this bike down there for 3 months, and it sat alongside the Porsche in the museum.
Now, one of the things that I want to point out that I really like about this bike, and I've always admired about custom motorcycles, is the cleanness here. All of the cables are down inside the handlebars. That takes real work, right?
Yeah, and you can only do it on certain style bars, but it's an internal throttle cable. It comes out here, and you can do it on this because the bar's sweeping. There's no real tight turns, so it works good on that.
Excellent. Paint job about the same cost, about the same time frame on this one?
Yeah, no, the Woodstock was a little tougher to do. The Janis Joplin was probably 3 months.
Okay.
You know, so it was a little easier to do.
Now, this bike I've been looking at since we walked in. When we were getting ready for this segment, I tried to find 2 panels that matched on this bike, and I just can't.
Okay, so Justin, if you'll notice, the Woodstock and Janis Joplin are what they call bobbers. It's just a stripped down, short chopper. Whereas this bike, which I call Trixie, is a bagger. It's got a fairing on it, it's got a 2-up seat, it's got bags on it where you can haul stuff, and it's got a radio and all that, so it's good for taking trips. I've actually ridden this bike all over the country. So the cool thing is, my thought process was, I gotta do a bike and I wanna do it my style but different. What do I do? What do I do? And I had this crazy idea. I'm gonna make each piece different. So if you had 20 custom painted baggers side by side and they're all crazy custom paint, take one piece off each one. Have a psychedelic fairing and have a pinstripe lowrider style front fender. If you notice, the front wheel looks like wood grain, so I wanted it to look like a wagon wheel. And when I got done with a bunch of stuff and I thought, what am I going to do on the front end? Let's paint a barber pole on there.
So that wheel looks really big to me. How big is that wheel?
That wheel is 26-inch front wheel, which at the time I built this bike, my staff and I, that was a big wheel. So now they're using 30s, 32s, and even 34-inch wheels, which are just crazy.
Wow, and so you have to have special forks to use a big wheel like that, right?
You have to have, yes sir, you have to have more, you have to have more rake.
Okay. Well, very cool. I like this one a lot. I'm going to pass it off to Aaron, though, because he gets jealous when I take too much time on the video.
Oh, Aaron who? Oh, cousin Aaron.
All right, Rick, I don't know your whole history, but this looks like a bike that's been around a while. I'm taken by the clue of Easy Riders Dallas on the tank right here.
Yeah, so this bike I've actually owned for 37 years. And this is a 1965 pan head motor, which was the last year for pan head motors and the very first year for the electric start motors. So I've owned it for 37 years, so it's been in a bunch of different configurations, but this is the one it's been in for the last 20 years, and I really like it like this. So we made the rear fender and the gas tank, Springer front end. I mean, the exhaust, you know, it's just that cool chopper style look. And you're right, the logo on the gas tank still says Easy Riders of Dallas, which we haven't been that in over 20 years.
The bike that I had that you built also said Easy Riders Dallas. It had been around quite some time. Now this one, it looks like you've got Marilyn Monroe's autograph on the tank here.
Yep, so that's the magic of airbrush, that you can actually airbrush her signature on there. But if you'll notice, the picture of Marilyn Monroe, you actually see this bike, the paint job of this bike on there.
I did not notice that.
Yeah, the rear fender and all that. So this is a cool bike, and like I said, I've had it for 37 years. And when I opened this place, I had 3 motorcycles. Well, this was one of the 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I've had it for all these years.
I always like a green bike. Green is one of my favorite colors, so.
Green, yeah, green. I like green and purple. You know, in the old days, green was considered bad luck for a Harley, but I don't think so.
Well, this was cool. It's classic. It's one of the bikes that I just, you know, it just kind of resonates with. Easy Riders and Stokers is one of the bikes I always remember seeing up here. But this is another one, and I remember when you built this bike, I remember being around for that. And this is a really cool bike. I think this is where, this is probably one of the first that you really got into graffiti as a paint job. Is that?
Yeah, so this bike I call the tattoo bike. And it was, this bike is probably 22 years old, I would say. And this is when that I was really trying to push the envelope. I was really trying to do things different than what I have done in the past. I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Keep doing flames on a bike.
You know? Exactly, and flames are cool. I love flames, but I wanted to do something really crazy. And at the time, I had just opened a tattoo parlor, so I thought, you know, I like it when people are sleeved, you know, which means it's just tattoos running all up and down their arms. So I thought, what if I did a bike and the whole bike was just tattoos, you know? And people say, how many tattoos are on that bike? And I say, 1. It's just covered in tattoos.
Well, the cool thing about these bikes, and with you being a custom bike builder, it's an art. You know, you put parts of you all throughout your art. And I know on this one, I know some of the people who've been through Stokers, and I see the Hey Joe T down here.
Right.
One of your old friends have been around for a long time, used to work here. And so I'm sure there's tons of stories within all of these tattoos, and you probably don't want to watch a video so long that will tell all of them. But I always love the fork on this one. I think this is just classic chopper style right here.
It is, and so the fork is actually, the Springer front end is Sugar Bear, which what is so cool about Sugar Bear, you know, on regular choppers you have what's called flop, which when you're turning the wheel, it flops back over, and on a Sugar Bear front end, there's no flop. So wherever you turn the wheel, it stays. And if you notice, the bike doesn't hardly move when you're turning the wheel. So that's what's the cool thing about Sugar Bear, and he achieves that by having the pivot point down here instead of going straight to the axle. That's what this long rocker is for.
Very cool. Lots of chrome, just like you want on a bike. Now, before we keep going on bikes, Rick, I gotta stop for a second and ask about this Coffin right here. So I was just curious in looking at this Coffin, is this for you or is this where you keep the muscle?
So that the Coffin is my final resting place. So my painter has his own coffin and he's had it for years. So years ago I told him that I would like to have a coffin Rick Fairless style. So about 5 years ago he said, I found a coffin, do you want it? And I said, yep. And he said, I want to paint it up really crazy. And I said, I will send you all the stuff that I want on it. So if you look at it, it's got my grandkids' names on there and my mom and my wife and just, you know, things that are important to me. So the tough part was he has a hearse. So when he delivered this to me, he delivered it to me in the hearse and we pulled it out like at a funeral. My wife was not happy. She was not happy. Well, not happy.
I hope you're around for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say that when the day comes when you have to lay in this,
I'm going out in
one
style.
Hell of a party.
I'm going out in style. Yep.
Well, here we've got another Springer with the Sugar Bear forks.
Yep.
Another graffiti bike, but what is special about this one here?
So my wife had always, you know, wanted me to name a bike after her. So I call this bike the Susie Chopper, and that's my wife's picture painted on there. And I wanted to do kind of a peace and love, kind of psychedelic theme to it, you know, which is my favorite thing. So I like the use of color, lots of color. And so that's what we did, the long, thin, chopper style gas tank. That's my wife on there. We did the king queen seat, you know, that you can see the sun is shining with the doves and all that. It's just all about peace and love. This bike we did probably 20 years ago, runs perfect, and this is probably my favorite one to ride. I love riding this one.
Nice, cool balance.
Yeah.
What I really like about this, I mean, certainly you got you on here, you got Sue on here. I love the eyeball headlight here. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you know, because I'm kind of known for the eyeball designs that I use, like it's on my Coffin over there too, you know, kind of a flying eyeball, which has always been a symbol of hot rods and coolness.
Yeah.
So that's why I did that.
And in true style of peace and love, brake pedals here, clutch pedals, you got the peace sign in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. That's definitely one of the coolest bikes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So over here, old school, back to Easy Riders.
This bike I bought new in March of 1982. So I've owned this bike 41 years. Mm-hmm. And so this was another bike that I owned when I opened this place. So I've redone this bike so many times and I always liked it, but I kept evolving. So in this bike, this is a shovel head. It was an FXE Super Glide. And when I went into this configuration, which is late 80s, early 90s, kind of a street fighter kind of style to it, I liked it so much, it was on the cover of Easy Riders magazine in 1996, so I've left it like that. This bike is really something special, and it's, you know, if I had to sell all my bikes, this would be, you know, this would be something I could never get rid of.
Okay, Rick, so I get to do the last three bikes, which I think are probably the three most unique bikes in this lineup. It speaks to me. I'm sure it is a bear to ride, but this Coffin tank is just the coolest thing. Tell me a little bit about this bike.
So this bike actually is a new acquisition. It was owned by a friend of mine, and I worked a deal to get it because I fell in love with it. And at some point, I'm going to redo it, Rick Fairless style, but I just love the look of it now. This style is called a digger, which it's short, it's got a short neck, doesn't come up very high, low to the ground, and it's got a lot of rake to it. This is the Coffin gas tank. See, it's got these real narrow bars. Mm-hmm. Well, what that means is, you know, you got to muscle that front end around. Right. Now, if this had a Sugar Bear front end on it, you wouldn't have to muscle it so much. But since it doesn't, this bike is pretty tough to ride in its current configuration. So that's one of the things I want to do when we redo this bike, is to make it where I can, I want to make it where an old man can ride it. You can ride it too.
I'm not that old, Rick. But so do they make a Sugar Bear fork this short? Because those
do.
seem really long compared to this one.
They do. He'll make it whatever size that you need. And he's out of California, and he's 84 years old, and he's still working every day. Great guy.
I can see why you went for this. I mean, if you get up close here on these
scrolling,
that's just fantastic. This is really old school cool.
It is.
And this one is just old school, a Bull Taco. This is an old dirt bike.
Yeah.
I know you started with dirt bikes.
I did. So this is the Bull Taco Sherpa T 350. I believe it's a 76 model. So, and the Sherpa T was a trials bike. You see those kids that climb over rocks and all these things.
Going up hills like this.
Yeah, well, it's not a hill climber, but the object of riding trials is don't put your feet down.
Right.
So you're climbing over stuff and you're stopping and you're balancing. Well, this is the bike that I wanted as a kid, but I couldn't afford one.
Okay.
And then as I got older, and I found this one for sale, so I bought it years ago, and I just love the whole Bull Taco made in Spain. They're just a very quality built dirt bike.
So what does a bike like this go for nowadays? Do you have any idea?
When I bought this one 20 years ago, it was $5 or $6 grand.
Okay.
And I think now it's probably double that.
Okay. These are super cool. I've always liked Bull Taco. I think the name is cool, and you're right. Spanish bikes, super cool. Now this one is really unique. This is not a V-twin, except the Bull Taco. All these bikes are V-twins. This is a Honda, right?
Yeah, so this is a 1971 Honda 754. This is a one owner, so this is a project bike, which is why I keep it in here. So the story on this bike was, a guy bought it, he lived in Kansas, he bought this bike new, took it home, took all the new stuff off of it, and he built it into a chopper. And so I've got pictures somewhere of him riding this bike all over the country. So he died, it left it to one of his neighbors, and I bought it from him. And I still had the original carcass, the original frame and gas tank and everything for this motorcycle.
Are you going to restore it back to original?
No.
Okay.
And I've never been one to restore things to original. I mean, I've got a lot of old stuff, and when people restore stuff back to original, man, I love it. That's not me. That's not me. I want it cool, and I want it, the way that my idea of what it should be.
So here's my other question. Have you ridden this bike?
No, sir.
So does it run right now?
No, it hasn't ridden. When the guy died and gave it to his neighbor, that's my buddy, and he rode it.
Okay.
And he said it was leaking gas. He put it up in the garage, and about a year later, I bought it from him.
So those bars are so narrow so you can ride it with handcuffs on, right?
See how he thinks like that? How'd you think? I never thought of it like that. Was the style back then.
So what year is this?
This is, I believe it's a 71, if I remember right.
Wow, that must be a bear to ride with those handlebars.
It's almost impossible for somebody other than a young, strong guy, the same way as on that digger, because the reason handlebars are wide is because you have leverage.
Right.
Well, bars like this, and the young guys are still doing cool bikes with narrow handlebars because they are so cool. It's just harder to ride.
I see there's another bike behind us. If we go around the corner, you're going to see other bikes here. I know you've got work to do. Me, I'm just a YouTube personality. I got nothing else to do. So I'll let you go for the day. I want to thank you all for watching, ask you to subscribe for more content like this, and tell us in the comments, what's your favorite bike? Thanks so much, Rick.
Thank you.